Hi, my name is Brianna Motzkus. I'm with the Fabric Patch in Ephrata, Washington. You can find us at fabricpatch.net. And today we're going to talk about how to make a winding ways. Alright, so let me start off with showing you where the block is. So right here, this is my little 8-inch finished winding ways block. Okay, so winding ways is something that has been around for a really long time. It is technically made with template piecing, which means you're going to have little acrylic pieces to cut out. I'm going to show it to you real fast. There's a couple ways. So acrylic pieces, and you might think, oh my gosh, it's not happening. It's really cool. It really does give a really cool effect. It is curved piecing. Curved piecing isn't as scary to me as maybe to some people. It's kind of fun. And what's really nice about a winding ways is you can kind of square it up. So you do have points you kind of have to watch out for, but there's so much going on that if something bad were to happen to one of your points, I don't think you'd ever notice. Like I can see like on this one's totally, that's about 1/4 of an inch off on that point. And I bet you didn't even see that. These curved pieces are what's making this kind of cool circular effect that you see throughout the entire block that keeps going around. This quilt in particular is 4 blocks. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4 by 5. So this one is 20 squares. You can do other things. Again, you can get both pre-cut options and be able to make a much larger quilt. And again, yours can be 2 colors, light and dark, so it is easier to see if you feel like, oh, I'm going to do that much work, that much curved piecing, you want to see it without a doubt, change what you like. I like kind of the blended mystery part of it. And again, that's why I did a simple serpentine stitch and just kept kind of going around those curved pieces to accentuate those circles. So my quilting probably also hid the fact that I really do have little blocks as I keep going around. Winding ways is pretty fun, pretty rewarding. You can get them in a pattern with templates. Again, your templates are going to change. I think I only have the 8.5-inch finished blocks in templates. In the description below, there is a free pattern from All People Quilt magazine that is attached to the video. So if you want to make it, you can make a paper template. You can actually have all the written instructions. You're kind of going to need 2.5 yards of a dark, 2.5 yards of a light if you really want to see a high contrast quilt, kind of like the picture. You'll see mine is a little more blended, whereas I might have more dark on the outside and more of a light on the inside, because this right here is your winding ways block. And then the block itself is what creates this really cool secondary circle effect that you can see. And the quilting was really simple. I just kind of did a little serpentine stitch all the way around every curved edge to kind of accentuate that circular motion. We also have here at the quilt shop is we actually have an AccuQuilt cutter, and we have the winding ways die cut. So we have die cut some kits for you. You can get them in a mixed batiks, which is kind of mixed rainbow. So you will have every color under the sun, and you can make it in 24 different blocks, or I do have one that's 12 blocks. So depending on how big you want to do it. I don't have as many 24 pre-cut kits left, but you know, get as many 12s as you want. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about how to construct the block. So I'm actually going to use one of the pre-cut die cut kits, but again, if you are using a template piece, if you've printed off the free pattern in the description below, maybe you've printed off and you've cut out your template paper and you have your pieces set out. I'm going to talk to you about how to lay those out and how to do some shuffling if you wanted a little more mixed together. So when you get your kit, you actually have 2 pieces of cardboard, and if you just nicely separate the 2 pieces of cardboard, you'll come up with it already laid out like this for you. So you can see they're all cut into pieces. You are going to have these little notches. You will notice in your templates, whether you do the acrylic templates or you do the print off in your free pattern, there will be reference points to those notches. So in this case, it's a little dot with your pencil or your friction pen. And I believe in the free pattern, it is actually, you're cutting out a little notch. It's kind of an important part. It really makes the curved piecing easier because you already know the center of all of those curved pieces. So when you decide whether if it's a pre-cut or you've done a whole bunch of template cutting and now you're ready for the fun piecing part, you can kind of do some shuffling. If you're aware of how Janet Nesbitt from One Sisters or Buggy Barn, all that crazy quilting, you can shuffle like her by just taking one, moving it to the, oop, that was a double one. I'm going to take two just for reference and move it down. And so I would probably start with just the center being all the same color. And then you can really see you're going to have a real noticeable distinguished block. You can even make this a different color. So go down a little farther and that's going to be orange. And you would still have a very distinguished block. Being a batik though, you can see how it might change a little bit how your batik is colored. And that's why a lot of people do winding waist in two colors. They'll do blues and whites, black and whites, browns and greens to really make those all different. So depending on how you want to lay it out, I would set up all of your blocks and have them ready. You can do them in sets of 12, sets of 3 blocks at a time. I am someone who gets kind of bored with the same thing over and over again. So I might be someone who does like 6 blocks at a time, makes all 6, presses them, squares them up. Oh my gosh, so pretty, so much fun. Let's make 6 more. And you can kind of decide how you want to keep making those blocks, whether it's a solid 4 petals and 1 solid background. That is entirely up to you. Okay, so I'm going to actually, to sew it together, I'm going to show you in just 2 colors. So I'm going to actually, rewind these ones so that I can show you how easy it is to piece. And I think with you guys following along, having it just in 2 colors to keep track of is going to make it a whole lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the sewing machine so you can kind of see, but keep in mind, these curved pieces are so shallow that it's really, really going to be easy. And we're going to start with sewing these 2 units together. And then once these 2 units together and pressed, we're then going to add the side and the side, and then have this little quadrant. And then we're going to sew these 2 together, sew this one, and then sew these 3 to my already 4. So I'll show that in steps, but that's kind of how you're going to do it. You're just going to like how we're eating an elephant, just one piece at a time. We're going to add to the puzzle. All right, so we're going to start with the little petal units. And again, little bits at a time, however that works for you. But we're going to start with this little petal unit. And of course, a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Even though we are doing curved piecing, it doesn't matter, we're still quilting. So a 1/4 inch is still really important as we go through making our blocks. So we're going to start with these 2 guys. And we're going to go right sides together. The curve is really, really, again, not so crazy. The trick to curve piecing is pin less, not more. So I'm going to put a little pin right at the notch. Or if you're doing the template, maybe it's your dot, maybe it's a little notch you've notched out. Wherever that is, put a pin right where those centers meet. And then that's it. I wouldn't pin anywhere else. If you feel like you want to, you could pin one right at the beginning and right at the end. I would do no more than that though. The more you pin, the crazier it gets. And then we're just going to go ahead and go to the sewing machine. I'm going to show you how to do curve piecing both ways. One by putting the concave curve on the bottom and one doing the convex on the bottom. And that, depending on how you quilt, maybe if you're right-handed or if you're left-handed, that might help with how the curve piecing goes. I tend to always just put the larger of the 2 pieces on the bottom because then I know what's happening. So I'm going to go ahead and just line up that first piece together, right sides together, stick it under my sewing machine here, and sew a 1/4 inch. And when I'm sewing, I always make sure that I can, if my machine allows me to have the button where it stops in the needle down position, I tend to like to keep that just because you kind of start and stop quite a bit. I would say it's more of a tedious sewing So I like to always have it stop the needle down. I also would say that when I'm doing curved piecing, using a pokey pin is easier for me than using a Wonder Clip. Because I have to say, sometimes when I curved piece, I break the rules and I sew over my pin. But you can also get really close to your pin, whereas you can't get as close to your Wonder Clip. And then as we are moving our way down, we're just going to keep lining those two up. Okay. And then here is our piece. Look at that. And then we're going to go to the ironing board and we're going to press to the dark. Let me show you the other way. Again, 2 pieces, right sides together. We're going to pin at the center. And again, that's what that mark is. If you lop that mark off or whatever, cutting your own piece, all that notch represents is the center of both pieces. So take the center of both, put a little pin, and I'm going to do it reverse. I'm going to put the concave on top. And again, it's personal preference. I would not say there's a wrong way or a right way on how to do a curved piece. It's whatever works easiest for you. But both ways are pretty good. I think a lot of people like to have the concave on top. It's a little bit stretchier. And for me, I just always like having the larger of the 2 pieces on the bottom. But do what works best for you. All right, so I'm going to piece all 4 of these little petal pieces. And then I'm going to go ahead and give it a good press, and then we'll be right back. And one last thing I want to point out while you're sewing, don't be pulling on your pieces to make them stretch straighter. They should just want to kind of glide right into each other and be nice and flat. So not a lot of pulling is necessary. It's already working on a bias anyway, so it's going to be pretty flexible. So I wouldn't say overstretch it to make it fit better. You might end up into larger issues on when you get your blocks all finished and pressed. Okay, I went ahead and pressed all of these to the dark. I also think another important step to curved piecing is the pressing part. I think pressing at every seam is important. Just to make sure everything is going together nicely, especially for the first few blocks. Once you have a first few blocks under your belt, everything will start kind of clicking, and you might even know, hey, 4 blocks, that's it for me. I'm going to make the prettiest little placement I've ever seen, but maybe winding ways ends up not being your thing. I really like it. I sometimes always need a block that's a little bit more challenging. So once I have this little petal unit done, I'm going to head and do one of my inside background pieces. And again, right sides together. I'm going to pin the center of both of those pieces. And again, center of the petal piece. And we're going to put a pin. And again, hopefully you've determined by sewing all 4 of those petals together what you like best. Convex on bottom, concave on top, whatever that might be for you. Go ahead and keep sewing that way. And again, for me, it's just whatever's biggest goes on bottom. And we're going to line up those pieces. So this little flat top of our template piece here is going to line up right nicely with this little corner piece of those 2 come together. Perfectly, just like that. And again, if you want to pin there and pin at the end, you can, but no more than 3 pins. You're going to want to do some more, but the more pins you have, the more trouble you'll run into. All right, and then 1/4 inch seam. And again, don't do a whole lot of pulling. Just let your fabric kind of lay where it wants to. And again, get to your center, needle down, whether you need to rotate your flywheel or you have that fancy button on your machine, remove your pin and keep sewing. Okay, and there it is. All right, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and press to the dark, and then I'm going to add this piece. Again, I'm going to press. Once you have a few more done, you might feel like, oh no, I don't need to press. I can totally just sew those together. But again, I like having a nice clean edge to go with. And if you're doing 3 or 4 blocks at a time, you can press 3 or 4 blocks at a time. But I'm going to pause for a minute, press, and then sew on my next petal piece. Okay, here it is. And you'll see that's like maybe just a hair bigger than 1/4 inch, and that's okay. You might see, and again, looking back at the top quilt, you might see where some of your blocks are going to come right up to your other petals. Some are going to be a little farther apart. It's really okay. I would say, for me personally, I am not anywhere considered a quilting police. I am all about the fun. I'm going to do the best job that I can, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to rip if I'm off by a thread's width. That's not going to matter to me. I'm doing it for fun, and I love it even with all the imperfections. All right, so again, I'm going to do my center. And again, they're kind of all the same size. So I'm going to put the smaller unit on top just because I think that's easier for me. I'm going to start up here. And again, that piece lines nice up flat against that petal unit. To my 1/4 inch. Okay. And there it is. Now I'm going to go ahead and I can go give that a press now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to sew 1, 2, 3, those 3 units together on the top. So the petal to the center triangle piece to the petal. I'm going to do that same thing to the top, and then we'll be right back. Okay, I'm going to show you something really fast, just for those of you that have maybe curved piece a little bit. Maybe this will be helpful, or if not, you can skip this step. But this is why sometimes I don't pin when I'm doing small curved piecing units. So I'm going to go ahead and do concave on bottom, convex on top. I'm going to line up my start, which is going to be about like that. And my pieces are a little crazy. I'm going to do needle down button. And what's going to happen is as I am sewing my line, I'm going to slowly bring them in together. And you see how those just magically line up together? And I have to tell you, these pieces have been cut out and sitting ready for a tutorial for you guys for probably at least 2 months. So these are nice, relaxed. They weren't heavily starched before they were cut. They're just ready to go. Granted, they are batiks, so batiks kind of already have a little added starch to them before you even get to start sewing on them, but these just go together like butter. So again, this might be something that is more helpful for you, because again, I'm not always a great pinner. And again, my feed dogs are doing all the work for me as they're gathering all my pieces together. I'm just making sure that those 2 pieces at the end of the day match up where they're supposed to match up. And that's it. So if that was helpful for you, maybe. And there you go. And I'm going to press, add the other piece, press, and be right back. Okay, so here are my 2 pieces. Oh, I lost a piece. That's okay. A little bit of static electricity, no big deal. So now we have our 2 pieces. Now we're gonna, oh, let me show it this way to you. It might be easier. We've got that piece and that piece. So now we have the right side and the left side piece. The easiest thing, I think, to construct those 2 pieces, I'm just gonna move these to the side just a little bit. So I find the easiest thing to do, sew these 2 pieces together, right sides together, sew that little piece together. So you have this kind of a cute little bow tie. Sew that bad boy. Okay. And then what will happen is now you'll have somewhere to nestle this point and that point. So again, one side at a time, I'm going to do the bottom first. I'm going to go ahead and do right sides together. And again, you can see where those would nestle right into have that perfect point. That's where you're going to put your one and only pin. And then we're going to start from here. So here, so all the way to the other end, give it a good press, and then attach the top. Okay, here's the piece we've just sewn and we've pressed. You'll see that what's left here is 1/4 inch, as is the seam allowance down here. If you want to, if you find that there's a little too much bulk going on down there, you can trim away some of that seam allowance. Don't go too crazy, but if you want to just make that curve a little bit easier for you, cut it in half. Do like an 1/8 inch seam allowance just from like notch to notch. So from here to here, you can shave down that seam allowance just a little to make it a little bit easier for you if you feel like you want to. Not a necessary step if it's not in your way. It doesn't matter. You can always, of course, sew right through that seam allowance as you're making your original seam. So again, same thing, right sides together. We're going to line up this intersecting little pretty piece right here with that beautiful little seam we made there. And I'm going to put my one and only pin there. If you feel like you want to, you pin that. You can also pin your notches. Again, for me though, there's just too many pins in my way. But you can also pin there and there. Pin your notches, pin your ends. But again, the more pins you have, the more trouble you might get yourself into. So again, I like one pin and let my machine do the rest. So we're going to do that seam. I'll press it and I'll show you the finished block. Okay, and there you have your finished 8.5 inch block. At this point, you can stretch it really good and you can trim it if you feel like it needs to be trimmed. Mine might need a little bit of trimming, but really you're going to have a beautifully finished 8.5 inch block when you are all done and pressed. Okay, I decided to go get my square up ruler and my wet erase marker so I can show you how to trim it up and to show you there's really not a lot trimming to be had. So what I know is I have a 12.5 inch ruler. So I'm going to go ahead and mark my 8.5. So I make sure that my blocks are all trimmed to 8.5. And I'm just making sure that this green expo line is right on my ruler. And I also know half of 8.5 is going to be 4 1/4. So I'm also going to mark that center point. So I know that that is the center of my block. Oh, and you can't really see my marks, but I can see my marks. And it's important that you can see your marks. And then you can decide, make sure that your 4 1/4 is right in the center, that intersecting point. And you've got 8.5 and 8.5. And again, I'm trimming really threads. I'm not really trimming anything. And again, that's going to come out pretty. See, look at that. Just nothing. We're going to turn. Same thing, 8.5. And 4 1/4. Dun, dun, dun. 4 1/4. When I like it, go ahead and trim. This one had a little bit of something going on up here. It could have been when I was pressing, if I was pulling a little too hard. That could be it. And then that is your 8.5 inch block, all squared up and ready to put in with everybody else. Okay, and that's Winding Ways. So again, kind of a really oldie but a goodie that's really fun. Again, template piecing, but sometimes we need that as a quilter. It's one of those quilts that we're going to work on for a while, and it'll be really rewarding when we're done. We know it's not going to be something quick. There's a whole lot of fussy cutting to be had with it. And it's something really fun that if you do want to fussy cut, if you want to make a really cute I Spy quilt that's maybe not just squares, you can fussy cut to make sure there's a blue dog over here and a lightning bug over here. You can do different things and really do a really fun I Spy quilt that will be really cherished, and then doing a label of all of the what to be spied for. So really fun. Again, you can go to the website and you can purchase a pattern that has the plastic templates. In the description below is a free pattern from All People Quilt magazine that has the print off paper templates. Or we have pre-cut kits from our AccuCut that again is going to make 8.5-inch blocks. And you can get them in 12s or 24s while supplies last. I don't know how long we're going to keep these pre-cuts available for you, but it's something that's always available. If you are someone who is coming up to visit for the weekend, coming for a retreat, let us know ahead of a time and we can figure out how to get you and the AccuCut accompanied so you can cut your own if you are in the area. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you might try this. If not, maybe it'll take you down memory lane. Thanks for joining us and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching our video. We invite you to leave a comment, hit the like button, or better yet, subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. You can also visit our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Pinterest pages, or find all of those things and our online store at fabricpatch.net.